Welcome back to our Christmas content advent calendar, where each and every day we're bringing you a brand new video through to the 24th of December. Now, we've already done a couple of videos about Sony. We had a look at the Sony A7 series, that was Throwback Thursday. We've had a look at the Sony A7R series, that was Throwback Thursday yesterday. We've done the Sony 61 megapixels, how good is 61 megapixels? Look at the A7R IV, what you might use 61 megapixels for. But I wanted to take a moment to talk about the Sony Eye AF system. How good is it? What can it actually do for you? Because you may have used Eye Autofocus systems in the past, maybe you've used Sony Eye Autofocus, but a lot of people haven't. A lot of people hear about it a lot in reviews and things like that. And since we've got a video every single day, I wanted to use one of them to actually talk about the Sony Eye AF system. So this is essentially the autofocus system that will lock onto your eye. It'll create a little green square around your eye when you half press the shutter, and it'll then track that around the frame. So you can move away, you can move towards the camera, and it's always going to just track your eye so that when you take the photo, your eye is always going to be perfectly in focus. Now, there's different things you can do. You can switch it to be left or right eye priority if you have got a situation where you know which one you want to actually be picking all the time. So, for example, if your subject is turned a little bit like this, you might want to always be picking the left eye so that it's always going to be getting the one closest to the camera. But generally speaking, it's pretty good by itself at just determining what you might want to be going for anyway. So if I was turned like this, I would imagine that it would actually just pick up my left eye anyway, as opposed to trying to get my right eye. Now, when the eye autofocus doesn't work, if for any reason the eyes aren't available, so for example, if I do this, it's probably not going to be able to pick up my eyes. It's just going to revert to general face tracking. So it's going to go for my whole face instead of the eyes, because the eyes aren't available to look at. It's going to focus on my face. Now, if for any reason it then loses the face, like let's say I turn all the way around, it's going to start tracking just my general form as a subject. It's just going to do subject tracking, which is very, very useful. But what I particularly like is that when I turn back around, if I've still got my hand over my face, it's then going to go back to the face tracking. And then if I haven't got my hand over my eyes, it's just going to lock straight back onto the eyes. You don't have to tell it to do anything. It's just going to keep doing it. It's going to be as helpful as it possibly can. Now, there's a few different caveats to this as well. So for example, if you're shooting a wedding, I actually got this tip from photographer Robert Pugh, and honestly, when he told me this, what a great tip this is. But if you're shooting a wedding, for example, you've got a room full of people, and you don't want the camera to be looking onto different eyes and things like that all over the room, because that's just not how you want to do it. Especially if you're shooting with a shallow depth of field, you don't want to be getting the wrong focal point in the room. But the Sony system allows you to actually set a priority for your eye autofocus. So for example, you could take a photo of the bride and set her as the priority for eye autofocus. So then when you're in this big room full of people, it's not going to be hunting around for each individual eye. It's just going to know, oh cool, ignore all these people, and this person is the one I want to be focusing on. This eye is the one I want to be focusing on. You can set a second priority for the groom so that you always know that if they're in frame, they're going to be the ones that the camera is focusing on. That's pretty much ideal for wedding situations. It means that it takes all of the stress out of focusing and just allows you to focus on your composition and making the moment happen and actually capturing the right things. It's such a massive weight off your shoulders in event photography and wedding photography. Now, I use the Sony Eye Autofocus system all the time. Absolutely all the time. So for any portrait I take on Sony systems, I'm using that Sony Eye Autofocus. I generally shoot with the A7 III, which had a firmware update not that long ago, but a firmware update which improved the Eye Autofocus and took it from having to press a little button to activate it to just activating on a half press of a shutter. It works incredibly well, and I rely on it way too much for a photographer. I definitely shouldn't rely on it as much as I do, but it's just so easy to rely on. Now, in that same firmware update, Sony also added Eye Autofocus for animals. So originally it's designed just for cats and dogs, but Sony are working to expand that a little bit as well. But that means that you can take photos of your pets and always get the eye. Now, it works better than you'd think for cats and dogs. Obviously, with cats and dogs, there's such a huge variety in the kind of facial structure because they're just very, very different between, different breeds of dog or anything like that. Even with my dog, who has hair in front of his eyes a lot of the time, you know, especially his hair just grows so fast, you know, you just can't keep up with getting it cut because it just grows so fast. So even if he has a little bit of hair, you know, a bit of a fluffy face, for example, it's still able to get his eye and get these really, really nice pictures. It's actually really quite incredible to watch it happen. Now I'm gonna film some footage now from my monitor. Unfortunately, I don't have any way to screen record it, which is such a shame, but I'm gonna film some footage from my monitor so you can actually see the eye autofocus in action. Even with my subject much further away, it still picks up her eye. It's crazy how well it works. It just pops a little green square around her eye as she moves around. And if I get to move across the frame, if I get to move towards the camera, if I get to turn around, it just works so, so well. Now with the Sony a7R IV, one of the newer cameras that came out this summer, Sony have also integrated the eye autofocus tracking into video, which means that as you are videoing, you can actually just keep the eye always in focus no matter where the person goes in the frame. That is phenomenal, and for any videographer, for any filmmaker, that is a massive plus because it takes the pain of focusing out of the equation. If you've always got that eye in focus, that's perfect. Now, obviously, as a filmmaker, videographer, there's going to be times when that's not what you want to be focusing on. Maybe you want to do a focus pull or something like that. Of course, you can just do that manually. That's no problem at all. You can just take the eye autofocus off. But it's an incredibly useful thing to have in the camera. I film myself a lot. I mean, right now, for example. And it's you know, it's no problem because I set the focus point to where my head's going to be, just in case I do move around a little bit, and it's generally pretty good at keeping up. But if I was able to use the eye autofocus, so I'm shooting on the a7 III, which is fantastic for shooting video, but if I was shooting the a7R IV, I could just set the eye autofocus. I'd never ever have to think about setting my focal point. It would just always keep my eye in focus. I can't overstate how useful that is as a thing. You know, if you go out and you vlog with the camera, you just don't have to think about keeping yourself in focus. It's just going to do it. It's just going to keep your eye in focus all the time. Ultimately, the Sony Eye Autofocus is easily the best eye autofocus system that I have personally used amongst all of them. They've really refined it, worked on it, and made it industry leading. And it's just really impressive to see them add more stuff to it, like the animal eye autofocus and things like that. Now, if you do have any questions about the eye autofocus at all, pop them down in the comments. I'll absolutely get back to you ASAP. If you have any thoughts about it as well, you can pop it down there as well. I love coming back from a portrait shoot, knowing that every single photo that I'm gonna have nailed the focus. Maybe I've messed up the composition, maybe I've messed up the lighting. You know, I can't always perfect everything, but I know I don't even have to think about the focus because that's sorted, that's in the bag. If you like the video, make sure to give it a thumbs up. That really helps me out. Make sure to subscribe as well for more content. We've got new videos through to the 24th. So there's new videos every day through to the 24th. If you've missed all of our content advent calendar videos, you can go onto our channel, you can check out the full playlist. I'll pop a link to that down in the description. I'll pop a link in the description as well to the full list of kit that we use for all the photos in this video. And as always, thanks for watching.